I am your first wife, remember? Over my dead body will I sit and watch you wed a second wife. Not now that I am still alive. Never. Once upon a time, there lived a man called Ikenna who married a beautiful lady, Adure. Ikenna was the first son out of the two sons of Ekema and her husband. Ikenna and his brother had always lived happily as one and peacefully growing up together. Their parents made them marry on time to continue their lineage because they were the only kids they had. Because they were from a poor background, and as the first son of the family, Ikenna dropped out of school and started working to put his junior brother Ezenna through his education. This happened in the early missionary days in Africa. Ezenna finished his education with good results and was employed immediately in a very big company. He made lots of money and became richer than his brother Ikenna. All this while Ezenna was in school, his brother Ikenna has been the one taking care of their household, their wives, and their parents too. After Ezenna made a lot of money, he came back and took his wife to the city where they lived. Adure was expecting her husband to take her to the city too, but Ikenna did not have all it takes to start up a life in the city with his wife. Ikenna loved his wife so much, so, knowing what she wanted, he promised to take her to the city once he's able to save enough money. Ezenna's wife, Oma, always visits them once every month because they were friends and liked their company together. Each time Oma comes to visit, she wears expensive clothes and always tells Adule about the beautiful gifts her husband Ezenna used to buy for her. This made Adure more jealous and more concerned about leaving the village than anything else. Her attitude towards her husband changed. She started disrespecting her husband, and every night she would stay up crying till the day. Ikenna, as a lovely husband, would always beg her to be patient with him, but she refused. She told him that he was not meeting up to her expectations. He doesn't care for her the way Ezenna does to his wife. She gave her husband Ikenna 7 market days to take her to the city, or she would leave their marriage and go back to her father's house. Ikenna tried all he could to get enough money to take her wife to the city within the 7 market days. He even went to borrow from people, but to no avail. On the last day of the 7th market day, Adure stepped out to leave their marriage. Ikenna begged her, trying to stop her. He went on his knees begging her, but she refused. She told him to come to her father's house and pick her whenever he's ready to take her to the city. After she left, Ikenna went to their house several times, pleading for her to return, but she refused. When her co-wife Oma came back as usual and heard the story, she went down to plead with Adure to come back, but she refused, insisting on her words. Months passed, years passed, yet she did not return to her husband's house. Some years after she left their marriage, her husband Ikenna decided to take another wife since his parents had been on his neck about continuing their lineage. When Ikenna found a woman called Mma, whom agreed to marry him and support him regardless, Oma went to Adure and informed her. She told her to return to her husband before someone else takes her position, but she didn't care. She told Oma that she had moved on. Mma became a supportive wife to her husband after their marriage. They joined hands together and saved enough money that can take them to the city. But Ikenna decided to wed her first. Mma was so excited that she was going to be legally married to Ikenna. She started planning for her wedding. Mma never knew that her co-wife Oma never liked her, despite her kindness towards her. So, she invited Oma to come and help her with the wedding planning, since she had no other friends. But instead of Oma helping her, she goes to inform Adure of every bit of the steps they make towards the wedding. When Adure noticed that Ikenna was seriously going to wed Mma, she started plotting her ways back into Ikenna's life. She wants to be the one Ikenna will wed. Oma encouraged her to come back because, rightfully, she should be the one to wed Ikenna as the first wife. So, they started plotting her way back to Ikenna's life. Adure came back apologizing to Ikenna, begging him to take her back, but Ikenna refused. He told her that he is married now. He asked her to leave and never return, but she kept on coming to beg day after day. Mma, clueless about her plans, felt pity for her and begged her husband to take her back. She said she has no issues having her as a co-wife. After all, they are still married because her bride price has not been refunded, which was one of the reasons why she insisted on coming back to her husband. Ikenna listened to Mma and accepted Adure back. As co-wives, they lived happily like friends. A week later, Ikenna came back and told Mma to get ready, that they will be going to see the priest that will wed them. Even now that I am back, I should be your bride and not a second wife that is your concubine. Over my dead body will I sit and let you wed her, Adure said. Mma was shocked. She thought she was joking, but she was serious. She started following them to the marriage course, and whenever the tutor tried to stop her, she would pick up a fight with him. Ikenna told them to ignore her. People were wondering if Ikenna was going to wed two women at a time. Every other person comes to the marriage course with one woman, but Ikenna would always come with two. When things started getting out of hand, Mma went to complain to her mother-in-law, but she never knew Adure has her backup. Her mother-in-law told her to leave the wedding for Adure because she was the first and the real wife to Ikenna. Mma was surprised at her response. It pained her deeply that people she thought loved her all turned their back on her. The worst part is that she had no one to fight for her because she was an orphan with no close relative that cared for her. Adure, on the other hand, brought her parents to fight for her, and they threatened to deal with Ikenna if he weds Mma instead of Adure. Because of their influence, they bought everyone in their support. People started talking ill of Mma, calling her husband snatcher and all sorts of names. All her friends turned their back on her, telling her to stop going to marriage course with Ikenna because she will never be wedded. Adure and her co-wives stopped associating with her too. They suspended her from every of their gathering. Mma became lonely. She cried most of the time, hoping someone could come out one day and speak for her. When the people's attitude towards her became unbearable for her, she told her husband that she won't be going for the marriage course with him again because no one is in support of their marriage. But her husband instructed her not to tell him what to do. Meanwhile, Ikenna refused to say anything to anyone concerning who he will wed. On the day of the wedding, the both wives dressed up in their beautiful wedding gown. Adure with her ashabis in their beautiful uniform. Mma had only one ashabi because all the people she had met refused to be part of her ashabi because they don't want to be disgraced when Ikenna finally takes Adure to the altar because he can only wed one person. All this time these things were happening, Ikenna and the family had never gotten the chance to meet with the priest in charge of their wedding because the priest comes once in a while. When it was time to call them in for the wedding, the priest was surprised to see two brides for a man. In his wisdom, he told Ikenna before everyone that there is no way he will wed two women to him. He asked him to make a choice on whom to wed, and whosoever he chooses is who he will wed him with today. At this moment, Mma was scared of being disgraced before everyone. But Ikenna, without wasting time, told the priest that the woman whom he started planning his wedding with is who he will marry, and not someone who left him when he had nothing. So, he went and took Mma by his hand. Adure and her supporters got angry and left the church, leaving only the bride, the groom, and her only Ashabi, who has been supportive to her all this while. The church became empty, but nevertheless, they still continued with the wedding. When Mma and Ikenna returned home, Adure went to welcome them. She begged them for forgiveness. Ikenna was surprised at her action. "This came too soon than I expected," he said to himself. Mma, without wasting time, happily accepted her. Adure congratulated her for winning her in the fight. Then he told them that she prepared a delicious meal for them, and she served them. When Mma was about eating the food, Ikenna stopped her. He took the food and exchanged it with the one Adure left for herself, and they both ate. Adure, watching them eat the food, happily went and took her own food too and ate. After eating, she started vomiting blood. Then Ikenna told her that he switched their food. Adure cried out loud, asking him why. She said Ikenna has killed her. It happened that she indeed poisoned the food she served them. After a while, same day, she died. Ikenna and Mma lived happily ever after, and they later relocated to the city where they raised the 5 kids God gave them.